During a family dinner, my sister-in-law lost it when Dad brought up my $1 million inheritance. In a fit of jealousy, she started hitting her pregnant belly, threatening to harm her unborn baby unless I handed over the money. She claimed she'd make sure our family would have no heir. To everyone's shock, Dad threw her out on the spot. Then my brother dropped a bombshell that left her absolutely terrified. On my father's birthday, we booked a private room in Pinhailu restaurant and planned to have a simple celebration as a family. As a result, we had agreed to arrive at 6 o'clock, but my brother and sister-in-law hadn't shown up even by 7 o'clock. We called them, but they didn't answer. Seeing my father's face getting darker and darker, my mother quickly asked the waiter to serve the dishes. "Let's not wait any longer. Let's start eating." As soon as we picked up our chopsticks, the door of the private room was suddenly opened, and my brother and sister-in-law arrived. Seeing that we had already started eating, my sister-in-law's face sank immediately. She took off her mink coat and threw it into my brother's hands, then sat down angrily. My brother shook his head helplessly and smiled, helped her hang up the coat, and then sat down beside her. My sister-in-law is 7 years younger than my brother. She is very beautiful and pure, and my brother has always doted on her. Seeing that my father was on the verge of getting angry, my brother quickly took out a cake. "Dad, we went to get the cake for you." On the way back, we encountered a traffic accident, and the road was jam-packed, so we are late. "Couldn't you give us a call?" my mother asked directly. "My phone is out of battery." "Look." My brother showed us his phone. My sister-in-law bowed her head to play with her phone and didn't say a word. I have never been able to get through to my sister-in-law's phone. I think she has blacklisted all of our numbers. As soon as my sister-in-law got married into our family, she said that she only married my brother, not the whole family. In other words, don't bother her if there's nothing. My mother and I both understood, but neither of us said it out loud. All right. Since you are here, let's eat the dishes first." My mother nudged my father with her elbow, meaning to make him cheer up. It was rare for the whole family to get together. It had been half a year since I last saw my sister-in-law. I heard that she quit her front desk job a few months ago and was now concentrating on preparing for pregnancy at home. I hadn't seen her for half a year. My sister-in-law had put on some weight. She wore full makeup and half-inch long fingernails. She was much more refined from head to toe, no longer the pitiful little white flower as when I first saw her. After eating for a while, the atmosphere gradually became lively. When it came to the birthday wishing part, my sister-in-law also rarely picked up her wine glass and said a few auspicious words to my father. Only then did the corners of my father's mouth turn up slightly. When it was my turn to offer a toast, I stood up and said solemnly to my father, "I wish Dad good health and a long life. You don't need to be busy anymore in the future and can be happy every day." My father resigned from a state-owned enterprise early in his career to start his own business. He built this factory from scratch. In order to give us a good life, he endured a lot of contempt in the beginning. Seeing my father's hair starting to turn gray and his figure no longer straight, I felt a pang in my heart and my voice choked a little. My father was also a little moved. He drank the wine in one gulp and said, "Ji Jing, my biggest wish is that you will have a good future. Don't worry. Your mother and I have already prepared your dowry for you. And we will give you another 400,000 yuan to buy a car at that time." As soon as the words were spoken, a clear tch came from beside me. I looked over, and it was my sister-in-law who made the sound. 2. My father finally couldn't hold back his anger. His face sank. "What? Do you have an opinion?" My sister-in-law's face was tense. "Dad, Mom, it's not that I have an opinion. It's just that what you are doing is too against the rules. How can the bride's family contribute so much money for the wedding? How much do you think should be contributed? My father said in a deep voice. My sister-in-law thought seriously for a while, buy some bedding, curtains, etc. A few thousand yuan at most. She is a woman. After getting married, she is going to have children for the man's family. They can't wait to pamper her. Why should she contribute her own money? Isn't this purely a loss-making deal? My sister-in-law's mouth was like a machine gun. My brother couldn't stop her at all. My father suddenly stood up. Pointing at my sister-in-law with his finger, his hand trembling with anger, he said, "Don't use your family's ideas to judge my daughter. When you got married into our family, I gave your parents 200,000 yuan as betrothal gift. We had no complaints as long as you and Jining lived well. But Zijing is my only daughter. We don't sell our daughter. I just want her to be happy. How much money I want to give her is my business. It's none of your business." My sister-in-law also got angry. Why is it none of my business? I am the eldest son's wife. The child I will give birth to in the future is the eldest grandson and will inherit the family business. Are you always saying these because you think my family is poor? So what if I gave your family 200,000 yuan as betrothal gift? Don't forget, I got married into your family at the age of 21 to give birth to a son for you. The loss of my youth is priceless. After saying that, my sister-in-law began to beat my brother, who was silent beside her. You useless thing. Say something. As soon as my brother heard my sister-in-law mention her age, he was so pinched that he couldn't say a word. He was 7 years older than my sister-in-law. At the beginning, he promised my sister-in-law's parents 200,000 yuan as betrothal gift and promised to let her live in a big house, so she was willing to marry him. But he loved me since I was a child and was more unwilling to make me sad at this time, so he could only pretend to be dead. At this time, my mother spoke with a calm tone, "Kursin, your father and I are not people who value men more than women. Since childhood, whatever Jining had, Zijing should also have. When you and Jining got married, we prepared a house bought with 2.6 million yuan in full, 200,000 yuan as betrothal gift and 400,000 yuan in cash. The family conditions are okay, so we prepared almost the same for Zijing. We can't let our daughter think that we are partial. To be honest with you, the house opposite your home is actually in Zijing's name. Your father and I have worked hard all our lives to earn this money. How to spend it, I think, is not up to you to point fingers." My sister-in-law was stunned when she heard it. It turned out that my parents bought 2 opposite houses at the same time in the beginning. One was for my brother and the other was for me. But I had been living with my parents all the time, so my sister-in-law thought that the house opposite was what my parents would leave to her in the future. After being stunned for a long time, my sister-in-law suddenly pounded her lower abdomen violently with her hands. "I won't give birth. I won't give birth." 3. Now, my parents and I were all frightened. Even my brother was shocked. "You? What do you mean?" My sister-in-law sobbed and said, "I won't have this child." My mother suddenly stood up. "Are you pregnant?" My sister-in-law glared at my mother fiercely. "If I want to be, I can be. If I don't want to be, I won't be." Oh, that means she is not pregnant yet. We all breathed a sigh of relief. You know, just now my sister-in-law ate almost all the crabs by herself. Seeing that we were all silent, my sister-in-law sneered smugly. "I tell you, the belly is on my body. If you want to have an eldest grandson, you have to listen to me. First of all, that house can't be given to Zijing. She is a female. In the future, no matter whether the child she gives birth to is male or female, the child won't have the surname Zhao. If you give it to her, won't the house fall into the hands of outsiders? But the son I give birth to is surely a member of your old Zhao family and can carry on the family line. Secondly, her dowry is too much. This won't do. It's not that I'm greedy. In my hometown, this is called giving a dowry in reverse and will be pointed at and laughed at behind my back. Anyway, I've made it clear today. If you can't do the above points, I won't give birth. My parents looked at each other with an incredulous expression on their faces. My brother sighed deeply, buried his face in his palms and said nothing. I didn't want to make my parents and brother embarrassed because of the dowry, so I said on my own initiative, "Dad, actually it's okay not to buy a car." My father glared at me, "Shut up." Then he said to my sister-in-law again, "Are you saying that if we can't do it, you won't have children?" Sister-in-law raised her chin triumphantly, "I always keep my word." Good, my father and mother looked at each other and said together, "Then you must not have a baby." What? What did you say? Sister-in-law didn't react. Children and grandchildren will have their own blessings. It's up to you whether you want to have a baby or not. We won't force you, said my father. How could it be? Sister-in-law said in disbelief. I don't believe it. You are just talking. Nobody doesn't want to hold a grandson. My father ignored her and told us that we could get dressed and leave. My brother directly pulled sister-in-law, "All right, stop talking. If you want to talk, let's go home and talk." Tears ran down sister-in-law's face as she murmured, "Impossible, it shouldn't be like this." It seemed that the development of the matter was far from what she had expected. The good birthday banquet ended up like this in the end, and it took my parents several days to get over their anger after they went home. In fact, I know that they are not that they don't want to hold a grandson. It's just that sister-in-law's behavior is so irritating that my parents, who have always loved me, can't bear it. Later, sister-in-law didn't mention that unpleasantness that day very much either. Until 1 year later, I really began to prepare for my wedding. My father said that he would give me 300,000 yuan in cash to bring into my new family, which was 100,000 yuan more in total than what sister-in-law had back then. This time, sister-in-law was not happy about it again. My boyfriend and I got to know each other through a blind date. His name is Chindu. He is the son of my mother's classmate. He is now a teacher in a college. He is handsome and has a good personality. I was admitted to a public institution. With similar backgrounds and the strong matchmaking of both parents, Chindu and I soon began to talk about getting married. Chindu's parents bought a 3-bedroom house in a high-end community in full payment and added my name to it. It has been decorated already, and the furniture and so on are all new. My future in-laws are very satisfied with me. They told my father that they would also give us 300,000 yuan in cash as the start-up fund for a new family at that time, and I could just move in with my bags. Chindu's family is well off, but my family is not bad either. As soon as my father heard this, he immediately said that he would also give me 300,000 yuan, the same as his family, and would also give me a dowry of a car. I could choose any car within 400,000 yuan and write my name on it. That is to say, for my wedding, my family would contribute a total of 700,000 yuan, which was 100,000 yuan more than when my brother got married. As a result, my sister-in-law knew about this. That very night, sister-in-law rushed to my home. She was still quarreling with my brother until she entered the door. "Father, mother, I think I haven't done anything wrong as a daughter-in-law, right? Why are you so partial?" Sister-in-law's face was wet with tears like pear blossoms in the rain. My brother was extremely annoyed. Kirsten, I have already told you at home. Xijing is my own sister. Mom and Dad are willing to give her money for her wedding. I'm happy about it. Can you stop being so endless? When sister-in-law heard this, she became even more excited. You are happy? Why don't you ask me if I'm happy? Am I still your old Zhao family's daughter-in-law? I married you when I was only 21. You promised at that time that you would let me live a good life and be good to me all my life. Have you done it? Sister-in-law cried even more vigorously. My brother grabbed his hair, wanted to say something, sighed and swallowed it back. My parents watched them quarrel quietly. After a while, my father said, "Are you done quarreling?" Sister-in-law's eyes were red, and she pursed her lips and didn't speak. My father continued, "If you are done quarreling, then listen to me. If you still have an opinion after I finish speaking, turn left when you go out, go back to your own home and quarrel. It has nothing to do with me." Kirsten, when you got married to Xining, I took 200,000 yuan as the betrothal gift. All of this 200,000 yuan was given to your parents, and not a single penny was brought into your new family. I also gave Xining another bank card with 400,000 yuan. As far as I know, you are in charge of this card now. Since it has been given, the 400,000 yuan is yours. If Xining does this, we have no objections. But your family didn't contribute a penny for the wedding. More than 20 people came from your hometown on the wedding day, and they ate and played for 3 days. The costs for food and accommodation were also paid by me. You said that I spent more money on Xijing's wedding than on yours at that time. Why don't you see how much they got? If you want to compare with others, what do you have to compare with? My father kept on talking. With every sentence he said, my sister-in-law's face turned redder. By the time he finished, my sister-in-law's face was as red as if it was bleeding, her lips were pursed into a straight line, and the corners of her mouth were trembling slightly. Both my mother and I thought that my father had gone a bit too far. My sister-in-law was young and thin-skinned. How could she bear such straightforward remarks? I was just thinking about saying something to smooth things over when my sister-in-law suddenly stood up excitedly and picked up a hard plastic tray on the coffee table and threw it at my brother. Zhao Xining. Say something, are you mute? None of us had time to react. My brother was caught off guard and was hit on the temple by the tray, which made him twitch in pain. Seeing that my sister-in-law was about to continue, he grabbed my sister-in-law's slender wrist with his backhand and scolded angrily, "Fang Kirsten, what are you doing?" My sister-in-law was like crazy. She cried and said, "Zhao Xining, your whole family looks down on me and my parents. I can't live this life anymore." My mother usually didn't like to get involved in such things, but at this moment she couldn't help it either. "Kirsten, when did we look down on you?" My sister-in-law was also unambiguous. "I've wanted to say this for a long time." "So what if you gave my parents 200,000 yuan? They raised me with great effort." "How much did they spend? Do you want to get a big girl for free? Besides, my younger brother will also get married in the future. If we don't give him the betrothal money, how can he get married? It has always been like this in our place. Some people did come from my hometown, but they are all my dear uncles, aunts, and cousins. Can't I invite them to have a glass of wedding wine when I get married? They are all guests. It is your duty to entertain them. Moreover, your family clearly has several empty houses, but you still let them stay in Home Inn. My parents have lost all their face." My sister-in-law vented all her dissatisfaction. My parents were stunned. During the wedding, the relatives of my sister-in-law ate and played for 3 days and spent more than 20,000 yuan, all of which was paid by my family. So they were still not satisfied. My sister-in-law thought that her words had an effect and became even more excited. She pointed at my brother's nose and cursed, "Zhao Jining, I followed you at the age of 21. I gave birth to a son for your Zhao family at a young age. Is this how you treat me? Don't think that I can't do anything without you. I used to be a receptionist, and many people chased me. I was so stupid. Why did I choose you? All your family members are bullying me, but you don't even say a word. Then it's better for us to get divorced. Humph, go and find someone else who can give you a son." My sister-in-law raised her chin and rolled her eyes at my brother. Usually, my brother would have given in long ago and started to coax her. But after waiting for a long time, my brother didn't say a word. He lowered his head, inserted his fingers into his hair, and didn't move. "Zhao Jining, are you dead? Say something." My sister-in-law said in a shrill voice and pushed my brother with her elbow. My parents got up from the sofa and were about to go back to their room, not wanting to bother with them. But suddenly, my brother raised his head. I saw that his eyes were red. He looked at my sister-in-law and said, "Kirsten, if you really don't want to, we can get divorced as well." This time, it was my sister-in-law's turn to be dumbfounded. 5. "Zhao Jining, say it again." My sister-in-law pointed directly at my brother with her finger, and there was an incredulous look in her eyes. My brother said painfully but firmly, "Kirsten, I'm serious. If you think I'm not good enough for you, let's get divorced." My brother is not tall, has an ordinary appearance, and is 7 years older than my sister-in-law. He has always been a little self-abased. However, my sister-in-law always likes to talk about her glorious love history in front of him, which makes my brother very painful all the time. "Dad, Mom, look at Zhao Jining. He wants to divorce me." My sister-in-law sat back on the sofa and burst into tears. No matter what, my parents didn't want their son to get divorced, so they quickly stepped forward to mediate. They persuaded my brother, and I persuaded my sister-in-law. After a lot of talking separately, we finally made my brother give up the idea of divorce and also made my sister-in-law stop eyeing my dowry. By the time we sent the two of them away, it was almost 10 o'clock. My father stood in front of the door for a long time and then sighed deeply. At that time, we should have persuaded Jining more. Marriage still needs to be well matched in social and economic status. My mother said, looking at Jining at that time, "Could you persuade him? Forget it. Let's interfere less in their affairs in the future." After this farce, my sister-in-law no longer mentioned that my dowry was more than hers, and my brother had a lot more smiles on his face. My wedding date is set for next Sunday, and the bridal chamber has been almost decorated. That day, I was at work when I suddenly received a call from my sister-in-law. "Jijing, you're getting married soon. How is the new house? Do you need me to help?" Hearing my sister-in-law say this, I felt warm in my heart. Although there had been conflicts with my sister-in-law, after all, we were family. "Thank you, sister-in-law. No need. It's all decorated." "Then, can you take me to have a look?" My sister-in-law hesitated and said. There was no problem with this, so I readily agreed. We made an appointment after work. Coincidentally, Chindu didn't need to work overtime, so he drove over to pick me up, and then we went to my sister-in-law's home to pick her up together. Chindu is 185 centimeters tall and has a handsome appearance. That day, he drove a black Land Rover. When my sister-in-law saw him, she was stunned. Jing, you really found a great man. My sister-in-law couldn't help saying to me. Hearing my sister-in-law praise him, Chengdu and I both smiled. The black Land Rover shuttled through the traffic during the evening rush hour and soon arrived at a newly built foreign-style house community in the city center. Chengdu parked the car in the garage and then took us to take the elevator home. The design of one elevator for one household. After getting out of the elevator, there is a space of more than 10 square meters. The floor is paved with marble, and there is a chandelier on the ceiling. Seeing that it was empty here, my sister-in-law asked, "Is this whole area yours? Can we make a shoe cabinet here or something in the future?" Chengdu smiled and said, "That's what the salesperson said when we bought the house. But there is already a shoe cabinet in the entrance hall, which is basically enough." Opening the door, there was a row of floor-to-ceiling cabinets on the side of the entrance hall. My sister-in-law murmured, "How many pairs of shoes are there?" Chengdu's father runs a construction company. He found a friend who had won awards in China to design and decorate this house. The design style respects the opinions of Chengdu and me, leaning towards the Nordic style. The colors are magnificent and elegant, the materials are environmentally friendly, and the effect is very amazing. Before the decoration was completed, an interior decoration magazine expressed the idea of coming to take pictures. Chengdu and I are also very satisfied with the decoration of the house. We took my sister-in-law to visit each room one by one. In the nearly 200 square meter area, my sister-in-law's eyes were shining at first, but gradually she became taciturn and gloomy. I glanced at Chengdu and wondered in my heart, "Sister-in-law, do you think there is something wrong?" Asked by me, my sister-in-law seemed to have just reacted and said, "It's okay. It's just that the surroundings are too noisy. There are all high-rise buildings. It's not as open as the houses in my hometown." Chengdu echoed, "That's true. Just a few hundred meters away from home is the commercial area. Usually, there are many cars and people. But the advantage is that it's close to where Jing works. Sometimes when I'm in a hurry in the morning and can't give her a ride, she can walk to work." "Oh," sister-in-law continued, "also, the living room is too large. It looks desolate when it's empty. And the balcony should be enclosed as well. Such a large area is so wasteful." The more sister-in-law talked, the uglier Chengdu's face became. I nudged him from behind and said, "She'll leave after taking a look." Only then did Chengdu hold back his anger. Sister-in-law carefully inspected the whole house. She even turned on the range hood to have a try. Finally, she left with a sullen face. As soon as sister-in-law left, Chengdu asked me inexplicably, "Why does your sister-in-law seem unhappy?" "It's our house. No matter how poorly it's decorated, what does it have to do with her?" But I became worried. Has sister-in-law got jealous again? 6. On the night before my wedding, my brother said that sister-in-law was ill and couldn't come. But looking at my brother's face, I felt that things were not that simple. Sure enough, I heard my mother ask him, "Jining, tell me the truth. What on earth happened between you and Ku Xin?" My brother said dejectedly, "We had an argument. She said she wouldn't attend Jing's wedding tomorrow." My mother sighed, "Jing has only one sister-in-law. What will it look like if she doesn't come?" My father said angrily on one side, "If she doesn't come, so be it. There are so many relatives in our family. We don't miss her." My mother asked again, "Jining, what on earth did you two quarrel about this time?" My brother glanced in my direction and said in a low voice, "It was still because she went to see Jing's new house." "Forget it, let's not talk about it." My mother laughed angrily, "Even if you don't tell me, I know." Didn't you tell her that Ji Jing's house was prepared by Chengdu's family? Of course I did. Then she said that since the house was bought with full payment, why did Chengdu's family add Ji Jing's name to the house? Why couldn't her name be added to our house? Alas! My brother sighed deeply. Why? Humph, because I didn't like her from the very beginning. I've met so many people in my life. I can tell what kind of person someone is just from a few words. I could tell at a glance that she was no good. Marrying her back would stir up trouble in the family, said my father. My mother said earnestly, the Chen family is willing to add the name, which is their way of showing their attitude and hoping that the two children will be well. Of course, even if there are any changes in the future, our family will never take advantage of others. But you and Ku Xin, you two are quarreling all the time. And her family situation is like that. Your father and I surely have concerns. Don't say we are selfish. You know how difficult it has been for our small factory to operate these years. It's not easy to make money. Hearing my mother say so, the scene of my father drinking until he had a gastric hemorrhage in order to get a 200,000 yuan order and being sent to the hospital in the middle of the night emerged in my mind. I was so frightened that I cried that time. My brother nodded. Ji Jing is my dear sister. I'm glad that you are good to her. As for Ku Xin, I'll have a good talk with her again. I have my own hands and feet. Give me time, and I'll let her live a good life. I believe she will understand. My mother agreed. Son, it's good that you can think like this. When you two have a child and your life is stable, then add Ku Xin's name. Humph! Father snorted through his nose. You two are so naive. People don't change that easily. Just wait and see. At that time, none of us expected that my father was right. 7. After Chengdu and I got married, we moved into the already decorated house. In this unit, several households had just started to decorate. Chen doesn't need to work in the office. Occasionally, she is troubled by noise at home. I thought of the apartment I owned before getting married and proposed that we could move there temporarily. When my brother knew about it, he was very happy. In the future, we will live opposite each other. If you don't want to cook, just come to my place and let your sister-in-law cook for you. My sister-in-law said slowly at the side, forget it. The dishes I cook may not suit the taste of the young lady. I quickly glared at my brother and said with a smile, brother, you are being kind, but you can't let sister-in-law do all the work. If I come to eat, you have to cook for me yourself. My brother knew he had said something wrong and also said, ha ha ha, okay, I will cook for my sister myself. My sister-in-law gave us a sidelong glance and went back to her room. Having said that, I was afraid that my sister-in-law would be unhappy. Sometimes when I didn't have time to cook dinner, Chen and I would rather order takeout than go to my brother's for dinner. On the contrary, sometimes when my brother quarreled with my sister-in-law and was driven out of the bedroom, he would sleep in the guest room of my house. One day when Chen was on a business trip, I came back from work and saw that the door of my sister-in-law's house was half open and there were a lot of people talking inside. I thought to myself, could there be guests at home? I was about to go home when my sister-in-law came out and said to me, Ji Jing, it's just you. Lend me a few chairs from your house. You can bring them in later. After my sister-in-law finished speaking, she went back. I saw a lot of shoes piled at the door. It seemed that there were indeed guests. The dining table at home was equipped with 6 chairs. I picked up a chair and walked towards my sister-in-law's house. As soon as I entered the door, the smell of second-hand smoke almost made me stumble. There were 3 children running in the living room, and some men were sitting and smoking. There were also several women sitting on the floor, all chatting and eating. The nice wooden floor was covered with melon seed shells. Seeing me come in, they suddenly stopped talking and all turned to look at me. There was a bit of awkwardness in the air. I smiled and nodded at them, put down the chair and turned to leave. Someone said a dialect that I didn't understand, which was the dialect of my sister-in-law's hometown. My sister-in-law replied with a smile, and all the people in the room burst into laughter. I didn't understand, but I felt it didn't seem to be a nice comment. When I carried the second chair in, there were more people in the living room, all looking at me curiously. A man in his 30s leaned against the wall and said something to me. My sister-in-law shook her head and said something. The man looked at me and didn't speak anymore, but his expression became very obscene, with his narrow, slit-like eyes looking at me. I felt like a monkey being watched in the zoo and felt uncomfortable. For the remaining chairs, I just put them at the door and went home. Later, I heard a noisy sound, as if someone was quarreling. The voice grew louder and louder. I recognized one of them as my brother's voice. He seemed very angry. Ask anyone else to go. Why did you have to ask your cousin? A single man and an unaccompanied woman. Is this proper? Nobody can go. What should we do? Nobody else is willing. My sister-in-law's voice. They are not willing. Why didn't you ask Xi Jing if she was willing first? It's her house. There were a few more voices, all seemingly accusing my brother. They were all my sister-in-law's relatives. I was afraid that my brother would be bullied, so I quickly put on a piece of clothing and went out the door. Afraid that they couldn't hear me, I knocked on the door hard. After a while, finally someone opened the door for me. A woman in her 50s saw that it was me and suddenly pulled a long face. She said to me in non-standard Mandarin, "It's all your fault. You made the couple quarrel." I was dumbfounded by this one sentence. Why was it my fault? I looked at my brother. I had seldom seen him so angry, especially when the object of his anger was my sister-in-law. He pointed at the man I had seen before and said to my sister-in-law, "Don't you know what your cousin is up to?" My sister-in-law retorted defiantly, "There's not enough room at home, and the children don't want to sleep at other people's houses. Only my cousin is willing to go. Besides, I was just asking you. Why are you so angry?" My brother was even more furious. "What kind of talk is that? Your cousin is a bachelor, and Chindu is not at home. A single man and a single woman living together, how do you expect Xi Jing to face Chindu in the future? It's not like sleeping in the same bed. What's there to be afraid of with 2 rooms? Besides, what's wrong with my cousin? Why do you say bachelor like that? Do you look down on him?" My sister-in-law's face was pale with anger. I figured it out. Probably there were too many people at home to sleep, and my sister-in-law had an idea about my home, wanting her single cousin to sleep at my place. My brother firmly opposed it, and that's how the two of them started arguing. At this time, my sister-in-law's cousins saw me and showed the same lewd expression as before, and I felt a wave of nausea. I don't know where I got the courage. Facing a room full of people, I said to my sister-in-law, "Sister-in-law, don't make it difficult for my brother. Chindu has mysophobia. If he knew that I let someone else live at home, he would surely quarrel with me." My sister-in-law snorted, "How come I don't know he has mysophobia? You just look down on my cousin and don't want him to sleep in your bed, right? Then what do you suggest? There are only 3 rooms at home, and the living room is full of people. Where do you want my cousin to stay? There's a hotel 200 meters outside the community. Why not stay there?" I said coldly. When the group of people heard me say this, they started chattering in dialect again. The aunt from before said angrily to me, "We don't have such a rule in our place that we have to spend money on a hotel when visiting relatives. What does your place's rule have to do with me?" I was baffled. The aunt's face was green with anger. "Don't think I don't know what you do. A little girl is so tough-mouthed." I sensed something was wrong. "What do I do?" "Go on, tell me." The aunt glanced at my sister-in-law, who quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. "All right, stop talking. Cousin, how about I get you a quilt and you make do on the living room floor for a night?" As she said this, she winked at her cousin. The cousin, who had been staring at me blankly, had no choice but to reluctantly agree at this moment. My brother was feeling stifled and simply said that he wouldn't sleep at home at night and would go to my place. My sister-in-law didn't try to stop him and slammed the door shut. At night, I lay in bed, thinking about what had happened today, what my sister-in-law had said, everyone's reactions, and the way her cousin had looked at me. The more I thought about it, the more I suspected that my sister-in-law had said something bad about me, and my heart grew colder and colder. Since Jin Kursin became my sister-in-law, I had tried my best to be nice to her, hoping to warm her heart. Unfortunately, some people's hearts can never be warmed. Well, that's how it is. Let's all live our own lives. 9. 1 month after that incident, I found out that I was pregnant. Just one time, and it happened. I had to change my mindset and welcome this unexpected little life. The whole family was ecstatic about the addition of a new life to the family. Chindu booked a confinement center 10 months in advance. My mother bought baby supplies whenever she had time, and they were all pink. I asked my mother with a smile what if it was a boy, and my mother said firmly that it wouldn't be, saying that she had dreamed that I picked a small flower and gave it to her, so it must be a girl. I secretly hoped to have a beautiful and intelligent daughter, but if it was a son, I would like him just the same. My brother was also very happy and told everyone everywhere that he was going to be an uncle. I asked him when he was going to have a baby. My brother shook his head with a look on his face that was hard to describe. It turned out that my brother and sister-in-law had been preparing for pregnancy since they got married. But 3 years had passed, and my sister-in-law's belly was still quiet. They secretly went to the hospital for examinations. As a result, both of them were healthy. But for some reason, they just couldn't get pregnant. In order not to worry their parents, they told the outside world that they were not ready yet. But privately, they had tried every method. They had tried taking traditional Chinese medicine, soaking their feet, praying to Buddha, traveling, and so on, but none of them worked. My brother was a little discouraged. He suggested letting nature take its course. If we have a child, it's better, if not, we shouldn't force it. A child is not a necessity. No, a child is a necessity. No, it's a son. I must have a son. Only by giving birth to a son can there be hope in life. My sister-in-law said loudly. My brother knew that in my sister-in-law's hometown, a son was regarded as more important than anything else, so he didn't say anything more. But one day, my sister-in-law actually found a witch from somewhere. The witch burned the talisman paper and soaked it in water, and let my brother and sister-in-law drink it, saying that it was sure to give birth to a son. My sister-in-law immediately swallowed that bowl of black stuff without hesitation, but my brother refused to drink it no matter what. This is all feudal superstition. The witch was so angry that she ran away. If you can't have a baby now, don't blame me. My brother also lost his temper. He took that bowl of talisman water to the bathroom, poured out all the contents in one go, and even smashed the bowl. My sister-in-law was so angry that she immediately pounced on my brother, scratching and clawing at his face and body like crazy. After hitting him, she sat on the ground alone and sobbed. My brother thought that my sister-in-law had become obsessed with having a son. In those few days, his face and arms were all covered with blood scratches. Even when my mother asked him to come home for dinner, he found an excuse to decline. Just when my brother was worried, I became pregnant. As a result, without thinking, he shared this news with my sister-in-law. "Kirsten, do you know that Zhijing is pregnant?" I didn't expect them to be so fast. But he didn't notice my sister-in-law's face, which was extremely gloomy. My sister-in-law slowly raised her head, with dark circles under her eyes. "Are you blaming me for not being able to have a baby?" My brother was stunned and immediately realized that he might have said something wrong again. He stepped forward and hugged my sister-in-law. "No, no. Let's not be in a hurry. Let's take it slowly. I'm just happy for Zhijing." Suddenly, my sister-in-law pushed my brother off the bed and asked him gloomily, "She's pregnant. Why are you so happy? Could it be that the baby is yours?" My brother couldn't believe his ears. "What nonsense are you talking about? Didn't you sleep at her place last month? Calculate the days. It's just right." My sister-in-law sneered. "I've long thought that you two siblings were abnormal. How can a brother sleep at his sister's place every so often? Otherwise, how could she get pregnant so quickly? All of you in the Zhao family are shameless." My sister-in-law didn't know what was wrong. She couldn't control her mouth and talked nonsense. "Chin Kirsten." My brother really couldn't listen anymore. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. "Shut up. You want to hit me." My sister-in-law had always been pampered by my brother. How could she have suffered such grievances? She grabbed the desk lamp on the bedside table and threw it at my brother. As a result, she missed, and the glass smashed on the ground and shattered into pieces. The two of them fought at home. In the end, there were hardly a few complete things left in the house. It was not until the neighbors called the police that this husband and wife battle stopped. After the police left, my sister-in-law suddenly knelt on the messy ground and cried while covering her face. "Why? Why?" My sister-in-law burst into a heart-rending cry in the messy home. I happened to be out that day. I learned about their quarrel later from my mother and the neighbors. I guess that perhaps because I was pregnant, my sister-in-law was more impatient and in a bad mood. I wanted to comfort her, but thinking about her attitude towards me, I thought it better not to ask for trouble, lest she thought I was showing off to her. But the development of things was always unexpected. Since I got pregnant, my sister-in-law had become closer to me instead. After that quarrel, the relationship between my brother and my sister-in-law seemed to be in a deadlock, and they were indifferent to each other in daily life. My sister-in-law had no friends in the city and didn't go to work. She stayed at home every day, watching TV and playing with her mobile phone. She was very lonely. Probably for this reason, she began to take the initiative to chat with me. Gradually, I also let go of my grudges against her. After all, we were family, and my mother also hoped that I could get along well with my sister-in-law. She cooked better than I did and often invited me to have dinner at her home. But I found that every time after having dinner at my sister-in-law's home, my lower abdomen would ache faintly. I went to see a doctor. The doctor asked me in detail what I had eaten. I thought for a while. My sister-in-law made hawthorn snowballs extremely well, and I would eat a lot every time I went there. She also made a lot of hawthorn cans for me and let me take them home to eat. After hearing what I said, the doctor told me seriously that hawthorn had the effect of promoting blood circulation and could also promote uterine contractions, so I should try not to eat it during pregnancy. I didn't know whether my sister-in-law did it on purpose or not. I didn't want to think so badly of her. After knowing the reason, my sister-in-law looked guilty. I'm sorry. I haven't had a baby, and I really don't know these things. I almost hurt you. I'm sorry. My sister-in-law was so sincere that she even shed tears. I could only comfort her instead. Later, my sister-in-law invited me to have dinner at her home again, but I refused with excuses. After several times, my sister-in-law no longer mentioned it. When we met occasionally, she just cared about my health and told me to have prenatal check-ups on time. When my sister-in-law was talking, she often bowed her head and gently stroked my increasingly bulging belly with her hand and seemed to be smiling very gently. But once I accidentally saw that the corners of her mouth were grinning, but there was not a trace of smile in her eyes. Instead, her eyes were frighteningly cold. I decided to move back to my original house. The original house was bigger, more convenient for me to go to work, and the decoration had been completed, so there would be no more noise. My sister-in-law seemed reluctant. I thought you would live here until you gave birth. It would be convenient for me to help you take care of the baby then. I said indifferently, thank you, sister-in-law. I will go to the confinement center at that time. It's more professional there. When I was 8 months pregnant, my belly was already very big. Chindu suggested that I take maternity leave in advance. I disagreed. My current job is not tiring, and going to work won't be affected. Besides, the maternity leave is only 5 months. If I use it up now, what shall I do after giving birth? My plan was to keep working until the last day. Chindu couldn't persuade me, so he could only pick me up and send me to work on time every day. In mid-May, Chindu was going to visit and study in a foreign university with the school for half a month. Chindu was very worried about me and wanted to give up this opportunity. I smiled. I'm not a child. Although I'm not convenient to walk now, I'm not without self-care ability. The distance from my unit to my home is less than 1 kilometer. I can just take it as a walk. Chindu was still worried. What if you suddenly go into labor? Then go to the hospital to give birth. What? Can you give birth for me? I joked with him. I know that Chindu is currently applying for a professional title. This opportunity to go abroad is very rare, and I don't want to affect his future because of me. Moreover, Chindu is not at home, and I can ask my mother to come and take care of me at home. Chindu thought for a while and made up his mind. Then be careful when you cross the road. Remember to watch the traffic lights. If it turns red, never cross the road. All right, all right. You really treat me like a child. I said helplessly. Although it is less than 1 kilometer from the unit to home, because it is in the city center and the traffic is busy, there are 3 intersections in this short section of the road. In the previous week, I got off work normally. The weather in May was neither cold nor hot. I walked home slowly by myself and quite enjoyed it. On the 10th day of Chindu's business trip, because of a colleague's mistake, I volunteered to stay and help her check the data. By the time I got off work, it was already getting dark. The baby was moving around in my belly. Presumably, after accompanying me to work overtime, it had long been impatient. I packed up my things and got up to go home. The evening rush hour had passed, and there were far fewer cars on the road. I remembered Chindu's words. Even though there were no cars passing by, I still waited until the light turned green before starting to cross the road. Just as I was about to finish crossing the zebra crossing, suddenly a person on an electric bike shot out from the corner and drove straight towards me. The electric bike was very fast. I couldn't react in time. I was about to be hit when suddenly I was yanked aside by a force. The electric bike quickly passed by, brushing against my trouser legs. The rider looked back at me. Although he was wearing a black face mask that covered half of his face, I still recognized him at once. Those slit-like eyes were the same as my sister-in-law's cousins. Why was he here? Didn't he go back to his hometown? Why did he deliberately try to hit me? A series of questions flooded into my mind. The just experienced thrill made my heart beat uncontrollably fast. I was already 8 months pregnant. If he had really knocked me down just now, the consequences would have been unimaginable. "How are you?" Hearing the familiar voice, I turned around and it was actually Chindu. "Why are you back?" I was so frightened just now. I turned around and threw myself into Chindu's arms. His embrace was firm and warm, giving me great a sense of security. Chindu stroked my hair. "The inspection has ended." They still wanted to play for a few more days. "I applied to the leader to come back early to be with you. Fortunately, I'm back. If you were in any danger, what was I supposed to do?" I raised my head. "Chindu, I know who the person who almost hit me just now is." I reported the case to the police station. Someone had tried to murder me. The police retrieved the surveillance video of that section of the road and found that a person in a blue top had been waiting at that intersection more than an hour in advance. When he saw me appear, he started the vehicle and accelerated towards me. Moreover, his target was clear. Obviously, he was coming for me. Unfortunately, the lighting was not good that day. The surveillance did not capture his face, and the electric bike had no license plate, so the suspect could not be identified. I know who he is. He is my sister-in-law Chen Kursen's cousin. "I've seen him," I said firmly. Following this lead, the police retrieved the surveillance near my sister-in-law's home. Sure enough, they saw the trail of that electric bike and also found that my sister-in-law had met with her cousin on the day of the incident. At the railway station, the police captured the cousin who was preparing to flee back to his hometown. It turned out that the cousin was named Wang Xinming, an unemployed vagrant with a previous record of theft in his hometown. After the police interrogation, Wang Xinming confessed to the fact that he was instigated by my sister-in-law to try to hit me with an electric bike. Although I had suspected it before, hearing it from Wang Xinming's own mouth still had a great impact on me. I think that during the years we've been together, I haven't done anything to wrong my sister-in-law. My brother has been extremely loving towards her, even more so. Why does she want to harm me? I was also present on the day my sister-in-law was taken away. My brother angrily said, "Chen Kursen, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Xi Jing is 8 months pregnant. Do you know the consequences of what you've done?" Finally, my sister-in-law showed her true face. Her eyes were red, and she looked at me through gritted teeth. "Zhao Zhijing, why do you always outdo me in everything? Even when it comes to having a baby, you're ahead of me. I've disliked you for a long time. It's true that I found my cousin. I just wanted you to be unable to give birth to this child. If both mother and child died, it would be even better. At that time, the expressions on your parents' faces would surely be very interesting. We're both women. Why do you get as much as your brother?" I have nothing." After my sister-in-law finished speaking, she suddenly burst into laughter. Chindu and my brother stood in front of me to protect me. When the police were about to take her away, she suddenly started crying again. Her hair covered her face, but I saw tears falling one by one from her chin. "Why? We're both women, but I'm not as good as her in anything. Why is God so unfair?" The police escorted my sister-in-law into the police car, and I coldly watched her back. The unfairness in her original family has created my sister-in-law's twisted personality, but what have I done wrong? If my sister-in-law hadn't done such things, with my brother's love for her, she might not necessarily have not had a happy future. 13. My sister-in-law and Qin Xingming were arrested in accordance with the law and will be prosecuted for criminal liability. My brother resolutely sued for divorce from my sister-in-law. He said that he wanted to focus on his career first and wasn't considering remarriage for the time being. My parents were too lazy to bother about him either. Now the whole family's focus is on me. The last scare still had some impact on me. On the doctor's advice, I took leave in advance and concentrated on resting at home during my pregnancy. I took a walk in the community every day, waiting for the arrival of the little life. 2 months later, I gave birth smoothly. Just as my mother said, it was a healthy baby girl. The whole family was extremely satisfied with this result, especially my mother, who told everyone she met about her prophetic dream. In the confinement center, after the daughter had her milk, she fell asleep. Her eyes were closed, her lips were red, and she was so small that a towel could cover her whole body. Chindu and I couldn't get enough of looking at her. Darling, tell me, how can there be people in this world who don't like daughters? They're so fair-skinned, fragrant, and cute. Chindu tapped his daughter's little palm with his finger. If it were a son, would you not like it? I teased. I would like it too. But probably I wouldn't spoil him as much as I would spoil my daughter. Boys, after all, should be a bit tougher. Chindu answered earnestly. I nodded, I think so too. Whether it's a son or a daughter, we love them all the same. And I only want this one. I will give all my love to her. Chindu didn't say anything and gently kissed me on the face. The sunlight printed the shadow of the tree through the window, like putting a floral dress on my daughter. I only wish that she will be healthy and happy all her life.